So with this Arctic oscillation being positive, it then of course bottles the cold up across an environment with very little daylight and sunlight, of course, to penetrate heat back down to the surface. And as well as that, we've got a building Arctic ice sheet across the northern hemisphere. So this environment, this harnessing of a cold, severe Arctic air, is going to intensify over the period of time. What is interesting is we've got a couple of wee pockets of cold air, but the main pocket of cold air across the whole hemisphere is actually over Western Asia as well as northeastern Europe. Of course, the temperatures starting to drop now below normal across parts of Russia and down towards the Ukraine as well. Of course, that we've got a large upper level high pressure system remaining dominant across western and central portions of the continent. But it is important that we continue to hold on to this bottled up Arctic air. It only intensifies when it is bottled up over the pole. But interestingly enough, folks, we've got a few changes on the way. Looking ahead at Wednesday of this week, and you can see where the cold air is going to start to expand. If this thing will change, I apologise for that. Run very slow. Now you can see here the trough actually appears to be trying to become more. The wavelength actually broadens out, and that will then basically pull colder air down into that trough. As that trough expands, becomes more elongated, so to speak. But the bottled up cold as of Wednesday remains over the pole. You can see here a couple of very deep blues indicating severe cold air. Looking ahead at next Saturday, and if you notice here over the pole, you've got actually the expansion of the trough now stretching across the majority of Asia and up into northeastern Europe as well. That's an interesting feature. That could be indicating that we could be seeing a flip tap, a negative Arctic oscillation. If that goes negative, it means to say that we see the release of this Arctic air, this Arctic pool, southwards in the troughs. Skipping ahead to next Monday, it was the 14th. Notice the expansion of the Arctic air now starting to bleed down into the continents, both over North America as well as a large part of Northern Europe as well. Note here, folks, an interesting one here is the fact that we've got cold air now starting to pump its way into Scandinavia. So as of Monday, next week, a week today, we are likely to see the first push of very cold air into Norway, Sweden and Finland. Of course, after temperatures of riding, by this stage, folks, we'll probably see places like Oslo and Stockholm and Helsinki, probably well above 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. But this here is going to be a shock to the system for folks across Scandinavia. The cold, a pool of cold air starting to drift down towards the Black Sea and northern Turkey. Look at the expansion, folks, of the cold air across Asia at the moment. Siberia next week is going to see the coldest temperatures of the year so far. But the cold air, these models, this European model is suggesting a flip to a negative Arctic oscillation. What I'm watching for is the potential flip to a negative North Atlantic oscillation, and what that means is we see high pressure build over the North Atlantic as well as across Greenland. If it does so, and we see, of course, this negative Arctic oscillation, it means to say that it could suggest we could be seeing a colder latter part of November. Now, I'm not totally buying into the aspect of seeing brutal cold temperature or severe cold, as well as plenty of snow across the UK. I'm holding off on that one just yet, because you might find that a negative North Atlantic oscillation doesn't necessarily suggest that the UK is going to see cold and snow. Looking at the model here, it's finally uploaded. This thing's running very slow, and I apologise for that. But look at this. For this is on Wednesday, a week on Wednesday, the 16th of November. This is basically the time where one of the models is suggesting the North Atlantic oscillation shifts negatively. That, of course, is key to the UK. You can see here a finger of high pressure riding up west of a larger area of troughiness, a trough, low pressure trough, covering Scandinavia down through central and eastern parts of Europe, with the core perhaps over places like Moscow. Could be seeing the coldest there of the season there. If you think over the past few days it's been cold in Moscow, this model, if it materialises, would be even colder for places like Moscow and Eastern Europe. You would see Germany and Poland also seeing very cold weather and, of course, mild conditions. But is this trough, the key is this trough going west towards the UK? Because I am of the thinking that we're going to see a migration of the mean trough over eastern parts of Europe in the month of November, drift slowly westwards as an area of high pressure then builds over the North Atlantic and Greenland. Could this be slightly earlier than what I first anticipated? It is possible, but certainly by the middle of next week, it looks as if Norway, Sweden and Finland will start to beat down those way above normal average temperatures for this time of year. And it will be a very, very interesting next few weeks, certainly. But the bias at the moment remains true, that we see 8 to perhaps 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal across the majority of the continent. We see slightly above normal conditions over Eastern Europe, now starting to go below normal because of the cold. That cold is going to intensify over the rest of November. And I do believe that we're going to start to watch towards Scandinavia for the persistent cold, that trough, fed constantly by Arctic air. And I do think we might see a little taster of winter here in the UK by the latter part of November, but I don't think it's going to hold. I think the bias will remain towards our east, and then we're watching very carefully at next month for the change to severe cold and snow. I think we're going to have a very, very rough week towards Christmas, and after that the